Good morning. Let's get started. I understand that we have one public speaker. Bill Henderson, could you come to the microphone?
I just want to take a moment. Later in your agenda, you'll be discussing some revised performance indicators for transit, and I want to take a moment to express our appreciation for having been made part of the process. I think this is a very good first cut at getting to something that's much more customer focused, and also provides a good management tool for transit. The addition of weekend weight assessment is a real bonus, especially since weekends are such a problem period for the riders, and we appreciate operation planning and Transit's efforts to do that with some limited data available out there, and some real restrictions on the amount of resources they can devote to collecting data. I think the having weight assessment really gets at the customer experience. We don't care about schedules. We care about when the next train comes. As I said, I think it's a good first cut. We'll see how it goes, and we're hoping this really gets at the heart of how the operation functions over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and your organization for participating in that. It's great to have that feedback. Okay, could I have a motion and a vote on the minutes? All in favor? All three of you. The minutes pass. Are there any changes to? Oh, no, excuse me. Mr. Beckford's here as well. Good morning. Any changes to the committee work plan this month? No, hearing none. Tom?
We'd like to make a special acknowledgement during the meeting, but we'll do that when we get the employees here. Some of our employees were involved in an unusual situation and performed very well, but I've asked the chairperson to wait because there was a change in schedule, and they're not here right now. Operations report, Carmen Bianco.
Thank you, Tom. Weekday on-time performance results for April 2010 were as follows. Absolute on-time performance was 65% system-wide, down 16.3% from 77.7% in 2009. The A division was at 60.4%, while the B division was at 68.3%. Controllable on-time performance was 89.9% system-wide, up 1.9% from 88.3% in 2009. The A division was at 91.7%, while the B division was at 88.6%. There were 59,105 weekday delays in April. Moving to weekend on-time performance, results in April were as follows. Absolute on-time performance was 38.4% system-wide, down 7.3% from 41.4% in March. Controllable on-time performance was 86.3% system-wide, down 4% from 89.9% in March. Positive results in subway weight assessment continued in April. System-wide weight assessment was 88.8% in April, down 0.2% from last year. The A division increased 2.2%, and the B division declined 1.8%. For the 12-month average, weight assessment was 89.4 system-wide, an improvement of 2.2% from a year ago. Here, performance both in the A and B divisions increased. Subway mean distance between failure was 197,555 miles in April, an increase of 34.2% from 147,167 last year. The 12-month average mean distance between failure now stands at 166,665 miles, up 25.3% from 133,021 a year ago. I would also like to bring to the attention of this committee a finding that we've had in recent weeks, and that finding was that for the R160 car class, we were counting train trouble differently than we were for other car classes, and this apparently started in January of 09 through 09 up to date. When we looked at the issue, just as background, as the car class comes online, the first 4 million miles, aggregated miles that the car class travels, the defects and the mileage is not counted in this statistic. And also for cars that come online subsequent to that, for the first 60 days that they're on the property, we don't count defects, nor do we count the mileage. In this case, there were a number of incidents that should have been counted that were omitted. And we made the adjustment in this month's report, and the adjustment for the R160 car class brings it down to 372,219 miles. That, in and by itself, even though we had to make that course correction, is excellent. The car builder, by spec, is supposed to deliver the cars to achieve a 100,000-mile mean distance between failure, and here in this case we're operating at 372,000. So in terms of this particular incident, we are doing two things. One is I've asked internal audit to look at how we are doing on MDBF across all the car classes. I just want to be sure that we are consistently reporting. We will have a report out in at the end of the month, hopefully. So I'll report back the findings on that. But I did want to let you know that we did find a situation where I think it was 40 or 43 incidents that should have been included in the statistic that were omitted.
Were any of them, none of them were, I don't want to say life-threatening, but none of them would have had any impact on that could have caused injury to passengers?
No, absolutely.
No? Okay, thank you. Yes.
Are we still considering raising the MDBF on new car purchases? I think we're way beyond the 100,000-mile.
Yes, as a matter
threshold.
of fact, in the new RFPs, it's at 150,000. So we did.
Could you also ask Mike Facili, I seem to remember that in early 2008, or it might have been late 2007, an audit was done on MDBF in that time frame. If you think that there's anything amiss, you should talk to the Inspector General rather than the auditor as well, if you think there was an issue there.
Absolutely.
Okay, keep going, sorry.
That concludes my report.
So I just want to make this straight. The number for April 2009, is that adjusted?
The number for April 2009, yes, sir, it is adjusted.
Oh, okay.
Now, what we weren't able to do, because it's a little bit more complicated, that number is adjusted, the final number is adjusted.
Right.
We need to now go back and adjust all the months involved in this, which has not happened. It's
But this number is, okay.
That number
Yeah.
is adjusted.
So,
yes, sir.
so you made a liar out of it. I tell people that the equipment goes for 1 million miles without failure.
Well, I mean, to your point, it was almost at 700,000, and
Yeah.
now it's at 400,000. Again, it's
No, I know. But it's an impressive thing to say.
absolutely.
And now we get-
The change should have been made in January of 2009. For what reason it wasn't. So what Carmen said is we'll go back and recorrect all those statistics to make sure we'll incorporate them as if that change had been made in January of 2009. Safety report, Cheryl Kennedy.
Okay, the subway customer accident rate decreased by 29% in March, and the 12-month average decreased by 6% compared to a year ago. The employee lost time accident rate was down 22.3% in April. However, the 12-month average rate shows an increase of 4.1% compared to the previous year. The number of confirmed fires was up by 15.6% during April. They were down 7.8% over the last 12 months. Also in April, all fires were categorized as low or average in severity.
Chief Diaz isn't here, but I will give the crime statistics as I have them. Crime statistics in May were as follows. There were 177 major felonies in May 2010, down by a total of 11 or 5.9% from May 2009. Year-to-date, major felonies are down 0.4%. There were 67 robberies in May, up by a total of 4 or 6.3% compared to last year. And year-to-date, robberies are also up 4.8%. Moving on to finance.
Can we get the specifics of those robberies, i.e., was it, where in the system it was?
Sure.
I don't mean station, but I mean places in stations.
I believe we should be able to get all the information in terms of time of day and location, et cetera. Can you
Great.
do that, Vinny?
Thanks.
You succeeded in moving crime out of the subways and back onto the streets.
Moving on to finance. Thank you very much. No, in my career, it's been, I mean, when I came here in 1982, it was moving up and down on a regular basis, but I guess it is moving in that direction. Moving on to finance, preliminary April fare box revenue was $279.7 million, $5.8 million above budget, due mostly to higher than budgeted subway ridership. The average non-student fare in April 2010 was $1.48. In constant 1996 dollars, the average fare fell from $1.38 in 1996 to $1.02 in 2010. Operating expenses before depreciation were under budget by $22.1 million, 4.7% for the month, and $69.3 million or 3.7 million year to date, mostly due to lower energy and fringe benefit expenses and the favorable timing of expenses and vacancies due to actions that we have specifically been taking. In ridership, April 2010 ridership totaled 200 million, 1.9% above budget due to increased subway ridership. Year-to-date ridership was 755.2 million, or 0.2% above budget. Average weekday ridership in April was 5.3 million, an increase of 3.1% from 2009, and when adjusted for differences in school vacations, ridership increased 1.9%. Average weekday local bus ridership was 2.3 million, an increase of 1.3%. Adjusting for differences in school vacations, ridership decreased 1%. Average weekday express bus ridership was 44,000, a decrease of 0.2% from 2009. Average April 2010 average weekday paratransit ridership was 30,000, an increase of 10.8% from 2009. Preliminary May 2010 financial results. The total fare box revenue of $276 million exceeded the budget by 1.3%, only 0.5%, due to higher than budgeted subway ridership, and preliminary May operating expenses were under budget by $1.9 million. Fred Smith, Capital Program. I don't see him here. He's probably thought the meeting was still going to be at 11. Looking at Capital Program results through April, New York City Transit committed $165 million, which includes the Track and Switch program of a commitment of $66 million, Phase 2 of a roof replacement project at $18 million, and an ADA project at 45th Road Courthouse Square Station, and a structure painting project at the 125th Street Arch on the number 1 line, $13 million. Through April, $513 million in projects were substantially completed, including the acceptance of 40 more B Division R160 rail cars for a total of 130 cars to date, and the acceptance of 12 train cars used for our operating and capital program needs.
Any questions on the operating report?
Just one. Since you only have turnstiles at Tompkinsville and St. George, how do you measure ridership on the rest of the SIR?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I believe they take periodic ridership counts by riding on trains, but they're not continually done. I believe they do them periodically throughout the year. And I mean, when I was there, when I was general manager, we did them at least 4 times a year, if not 6 times a year, and I believe that's how they do the ridership on the rest of the system.
Yes, that's correct. There are periodic traffic counts along the line.
Weekends as well as weekdays?
Yes, the traffic checkers go out there and check it periodically.
And it looked to me as recently as April, local bus performance was still down, and it looks like that's turned around and we're going positive. Is there a sense that local bus is going to be on the increase now? It had been down as recently as April.
We continue to look at local bus service, and some of the routes continue to trend downward, and some in the outer boroughs are going upward.
The employees are here now, if you want to do it now.
Let's take a second to go back to what we were planning on doing at the beginning of today's meeting and make some special acknowledgments of some extremely smart and heroic people that we're fortunate to have working for us. Tom?
As I said at the start of the meeting, more times than not in my history here at the Transit Authority, it's been the actions of the employees in the field that have made an incident either not happen in the first place or an incident happen to the extent that they extremely mitigated what could have been very bad into something that was not that bad. In this case, I want to honor 5 employees who went far and above and beyond the see something, say something, and some actions that they took. And I'd like them to stand up as I speak about them. First is Train Service Supervisor John McGay, Train Operator Victor Rosario, Train Operator Luis Lugo, Maintenance Supervisor Sidney Elzy, and Track Equipment Maintainer Andrew Bernard. While operating the vacuum train on Friday, April 30th, these employees noticed an unauthorized individual walking along the Lexington Avenue line north of Fulton Street. The man was dressed in clothing resembling that of a track worker, and he was taken aboard the train by these individuals, where he immediately came under their suspicion when he could not produce identification. The train proceeded into the Bowling Green station, where the man, who was later identified as a despondent 22-year-old man bent on suicide, was handed over to the police officer on tunnel watch duty at that location. I want to commend the crew of the vacuum train, for on that day they did something that was more than just see something, say something. They took action that they believed was necessary and prudent, and it certainly was. The quick and decisive deed saved this young man not only from harming himself, but many others. He had material with him that could have done damage to other people in the subway. Please join me in expressing thanks to these employees for a job well done. I think they're truly an example of the finest that New York City Transit has to offer, and they are an example of what goes on every day in the subway system. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Sidney Elzy. You know what I'll do? No, I'll come on. I'll come on.
I could skip it. Thank you.
I guess not. Luis Lugo?
Thank you all so much. We really have very wonderful, wonderful employees at New York City Transit. Okay. JCC? Michael, I think we're up to you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. In addition to the regular project status report of last month's meeting, you have requested, Chairman Frasca requested that we'll present an update on the building survey and remediation plan for the 2nd Avenue, and we have that, and we'll do it after the update. I'll start with the Fulton Street Transit Center. The Transit Center Building Foundation contract is 86% complete. Decking on the mezzanine and platform level has been completed, as well as excavation at the Corbin building, and the substantial completion for the contract is on schedule for August 2010. So 2010, the lower part of the transit center, the foundation will be done. As noted last month, the bid opening for the transit center building was held on May 10th. The low bidder is Plaza Chavon, a joint venture, for $176 million, which is below the engineer's estimate. We plan to award the contract by the end of this month. And in effect, we'll be starting construction ahead of schedule by about 6 months.
What was their estimate for that project?
It's about was just about 200 thereabout. Yeah, so we are below that.
This is going to be very bad for your reputation if both Fulton Street and the 7-line extension are ahead of schedule. You
Yes,
have to be careful.
I acknowledge that. Yes. The MOU with the Port Authority to fund the RW Cortlandt Street Station has been signed. The Port Authority will contribute $10.5 million, and the MTA the remaining $6.5 million. The contract for the work was awarded on May 28 to Skanska. Just wanted to mention that all of the various projects which will be brought in service at various times, they are all on schedule or ahead of schedule. So in this particular case, yes, my reputation will be definitely tainted.
That's probably the last time you can say the RW Cortlandt Street Station, right?
Yes,
Yes.
it's actually, I think it's, yes, this week, right? After that, we'll call it the R. Let me move on to the 7-line extension. The first TBM completed its almost 4,700 feet run on June 11th and is being disassembled from removal from the site. The second TBM, which is currently west of Dyer Avenue on the 41st Street, is scheduled to finish its run by the end of July and will mark the end of TBM mining on this project. At 26th Street and 11th Avenue, all ground freezing pipes are in place in the areas necessary to excavate the tail tracks, and the ground freezing operation is scheduled to begin this week. Qualification hearings were held on June 4th for the China Construction Halmore International joint venture. The low bidder for the site L excavation and core and shell. Site L is a right-of-way vent building, and they've been found technically qualified, and we expect to award the contract this month. The low bidder is at about $57 million and also below the engineer's estimate.
Could I ask you a question about ground freezing? We had to do this with East Side Access as well?
No.
No. So the 7 is the first place?
We will be doing, I'm sorry.
We will be doing 2nd Avenue, I know.
We will be doing on East Side Access when we are coming, I believe, under the Northern Boulevard. That's where we're going to be doing some ground.
So this is the first instance now on the number 7 line where we've had to freeze ground before we tunnel?
Overall?
Yeah.
Yes, but we already did a piece going forward on the let's call it the tube that is now being completed. I think is the C1. We did about 400 linear feet of ground freezing there as well.
And are there any lessons learned when we have to resort to this technology for 2nd Avenue or for some of our projects that are threatening to be over budget?
Look, the only lesson that you could infer that you can learn from it is that if you do more borings, you may find the geotechnical area what are the problems earlier. Yet, I have to tell you that through years of experience, when we do borings, you always miss something. You can't do borings every 10 feet or every 20 feet. So you have to space them according to the size of the project. You look at your geotechnical information and you make an informed guess, if you wish, as to where you should do borings. So, yeah, you could miss things. So the lesson is we should try to do potentially more borings when we go forward. But yet, at the same time, you cannot just go in and drill, because we're not putting a building, we're putting a linear structure, so it's a little different. So, yes, we could do more boring, but that's about it. Beyond that, I don't know if we have any lesson to be learned here, quite frankly.
Somebody at City Hall, I won't mention whom, asked me, what is ground freezing and how do you do it? Can you give, in 1 minute or less, a simple explanation
Yes.
of how the damn thing works?
We're putting down aluminum tubes about 7 feet on center. They're filled with a brine. And then, and you go all the way down, by the way. I mean, on 2nd Avenue as an example, we're going to go about 85 feet down. You put a freezing plant above. You freeze this water, and therefore you freeze the ground around it. And once this, and it takes time. On 2nd Avenue will take about 5 months for that to occur. And at the end of the process, when you're done, you're going in with the machines and you actually cut the tube. And you're gonna, only after you finish that, you start defrosting, and you do it in such a way so you will not create problems, because once you freeze the ground due to the amount of water that you have in the ground, you will have actions in which it expands and contracts, and you do not want to have a situation and when it contracts too fast, and then you may have potentially problems with the building surrounding that area. That will be, in short, an explanation. Okay.
Do you think that freezing will take care of the rat problem?
Definitely not, because they don't live there. So where were we? Okay. So again, we got a low bid on the L, so that's good news. The Site J excavation core and shell contracts are advertised on June 3rd. This is the location of the main entrance to the future 34th Street station, and also a systems building. The Site K core and shell contract for the 34th Street station van building will be advertised later this month. Both contracts are scheduled to be awarded in October. In our first meeting together under this current scenario, I mentioned that I would keep you informed about the progress of our risk assessment for the number 7 line. Based on our continuing review, the forecasted overall scheduling costs appear to be trending higher than currently established, although I should note that due to the potential good bids we're getting, we should have a much better cost certainty once we are finishing the 2 upcoming bids, at which point we will, in effect, start our risk assessment. One other thing to inform you is that we have rearranged our contracting in order to try to cut down time, is to put the systems contract under one, and that will remove some of the interface risks, and we are actually hoping that that will also allow us to get greater certainty on the completion date. That today is December 2013.
Are we going to be talking about this more at CC meeting, at the capital construction meeting? I know we have
the CC meeting is something that I'm asked to reply if there are questions. It is a presentation done by the independent engineer, and we'll be there and be glad to answer.
Okay. I'll save my questions for then.
2nd Avenue subway. In this Mount 2nd subway report, you may have noticed a change in the forecasted completion dates for the TBM tunnels contract from October to December, and the 96th Street station structure from May to July 2013. Before I explain what caused the delays, I want to assure you that the mitigation plan is in place at this point that will recover. That's not yet. Bogdan, hold on to that. We expect to have a much more favorable forecasted completion date. I mean, what we did, the completion date is the same, yet we are trying to recover any time that is being lost from our contingency time, and we're doing just that. And you will hear more about it at the CPOC, if that, there's a question there. In general, the delay of the TBM tunnels contract is primarily due to the switching the start of the TBM mining from the east bore to the west bore. This has to do with the freezing of the ground. We had to move. We were going to go first on the east side of 2nd Avenue and then west side, because we have to freeze a piece of the about 140 feet along the east side between 92nd and 91st. We're moving to the west. That took more time. And there is potentially something that happened actually recently, that we had some delays in the startup of the TBM machine due to issues on getting all the components to work together, hydraulics, electronics, all of these things need to work together, and there were some problems in the startup, and they all expected to go away by the end of June, at which point we'll regain the time.
As the borings, we all went to that great ceremony.
Right.
The machine started up, but it didn't go anyplace?
Oh, it started to work. Yet when it started to work, they started to discover interface problem between systems, the hydraulics, the electronics. The machine, although it's an old machine, just the skeleton is old. Everything else is new with the latest technology. And what does happen sometimes that when you have lots of electronics put into a system, there are little glitches, and they did not work. The pressure on the grippers were not there. It's just details that it just did not work. We advanced about 40 feet, but that's not definitely. We expect to advance about 60 feet a day, not 40 feet in 2 weeks. So that is one of the issues, and but we expect that to be behind us, and that we'll move forward.
Consider the alternative of taking the 7-line successful tunnel boring machine and driving it right across the 63rd Street.
Unfortunately, there are different type machines, although it's the same contractor, by the way. The same exact contractor that is done the number 7 is doing here. So we have confidence that they will be able to overcome the problem. The delay in the 96th Street Station contract is a result of permeation grouting for building stabilization and a variety of location. And in order for us to be able to restart the sewer work between 95th and 96th, we're in the process of implementing a mitigation plan that will allow the contractor to resequence the utility and slurry wall work, and this will actually recover more time than we have lost and result in an earlier substantial completion. So we're pretty confident that that will work. Just on other things, we had another 100 feet of excavation in the TBM launching box that was pending the installation of facade ties at the 5 buildings, 821, 829, the one that we're also going to relocate some families. The facade ties have been installed in these buildings. The contractor is ready to begin phase 2, which requires the temporary relocation of tenants. And the relocation consultant has been working closely with the tenants, and the temporary relocation of the first group will begin on June 26th. This is going to be, I think, at the end of this week.
Why does phase 2 require tenant relocation?
Because the work that we're doing is to reattach the facade of the building to the building itself. Due to years of neglect and quite frankly, it's just old. The metal brackets that are holding the facade, in plain English, to the walls have disappeared, were not working properly. So, in order to reconnect it, we put some tie rods that holds it temporarily in place, but we then need to open the ceilings and put trusses that will connect the facade with the rest of the building. That requires, in certain apartments, to be relocated so we can come in and do that. So that's the reason for that. Yes. We open the ceiling. We put bracings basically under the ceiling that will connect the joists of the transversal joist to the facade, and that will ensure that they're not going to move for the next 100 years. We should live so long, right? I think that we observed that, in fact, the facade started to move away from the building, and you start seeing cracks. You'll see a picture on one of those things, and you'll see how there is a crack, the longitudinal crack that goes all the way down, and you know that wall is moving.
So this is something, it's not something that you take the initiative to inspect
Well, let me put it this way. Following this part of the job, and you will see in the presentation, we've taken the initiative to look at every building. So that's the next step that you will see. Yes, we are now looking proactively at every building, because most of these buildings had these problems forever. And once we show up, we are now actually the people discovering it. So we end up with we own the problem sometimes.
So we're making these buildings more better rather than less worse.
Yes, we are improving the buildings. Yes, and that's quite frankly, it's a business decision eventually. Anyway, the last building that was scheduled for tenants relocation is a building that you're going to see, 1873, in which we're rebuilding the building, so to speak. And they are scheduled to be back in their apartments by the end of September. I have a brief presentation.
Easier to build the building from the bottom up like you're doing from,
The easiest thing is, I better not say what's the easiest thing. But
I withdraw the question.
Good. Let me just, not yet, if you can hold one more moment, okay? We are blasting, by the way, in two locations at 69th Street and 72nd Street. Anyone that has seen there, we're creating two shafts going down about 30 feet. And the rock removal at 69th Street shaft will be completed by the end of June. We have, in fact, replaced water mains, a 48-inch water main at the south end of the work site on 86th Street, open cuts. This is around 82nd, and it was completed on time on May 15, and was turned over back to DEP. That's a good thing. And the bids were open for the 72nd Street station cavern mining. We got 3 bids, 2 below the engineer's estimate, 1 above it. Unfortunately, one of the bids, the so-called apparent low bidder, was Tali, and a joint venture with another Spanish firm notified us of a bid mistake. And hearings will be held next Wednesday to review their claim. Clearly, there was a big gap between what they bid and the engineer's estimate and the second bidder. So I think that probably it was what was. So. Just for information purposes, last Monday I attended the New York City Council committee hearings and presented testimony regarding the status of the project. With that, let's go to the Second Avenue building survey. What you're seeing here is basically the area 1, that is the lunch box area and the 96th Street station, then 86th and 72nd, including the 63rd Street station, that you have that in blue at the very end. Can you go to the next one? The 96th Street station has, we surveyed 31 buildings. We found 18 requiring remediation. We completed 6. We are working on 6, and 6 more are being planned in the next a couple of months, the work to start. Just gives you an indication. These are the 5 buildings that we're going to be relocating people. And the phase 1 facade tie work is completed. If you see here, there are little stars all over the place. These are the tie rods that we put in. And the phase 2 will be starting this week. Next, this is the building a little further up, 1873. It's at the corner of 97th Street. If you go there, you can literally see that the building is leaning to its left. Could you go to the next one? Now, here is an example. This is the back of the building peeling off. You can see the crack, and we are putting a raker system just to keep it together. Next. In the cellar, what we're doing, in effect, we're putting kind of a foundation footing, as well as column to support the building. And once that all is done, we're going to end up actually trying to anchor the joist, because the joist because it tilted, some of the joists are now leaning just barely on the wall. So you need to put it back. So it's a major operation. I hope very few, but this is just an example of what we're finding sometimes. So that's not. No, the 1766-68 was worse because it was leaning out. It was like referred to it as a leaning tower of pizza, because it was just leaning 18 inches in a four-story building. It's huge.
Is that your Subway sandwich shop sign in the front, or some copyright?
Actually, this building has two shops that will need to have a temporary location as well, because the frame, if you put it back for a moment, Bogdan, one more. Okay. I don't know if you can see it here, but this whole thing is tilted. So we need to, in effect, put a frame in there to hold it back in place. Well, not easily done with the operation of the stores ongoing. So
That's not a grand opening pattern. He's got a
I don't know what it has, but potentially, I don't know. I don't think so. Anyway, so we have a Dunkin' Donuts and a Subway that will require some adjustment. McDonald's is next door, so they maybe do better. I don't know. Okay. Now, the 72nd Street has 88 buildings in total. Okay? And just so you understand, after we finished the survey on the 31 buildings north, we actually got in touch with the Department of Building. Actually, when we were doing that, we were in contact with DOB, and we developed a memorandum of understanding as to which buildings we're going to look at and which not, that happen to be in the influence zone. Next. And one of the things that we have agreed is in a way to us looking at buildings as to exactly what type of buildings we have. And we have four categories, A, B, C, and D. A and B, virtually no action required. C, where normally we may have to put some sheds because you may have some bricks that may fall because of the, some of this. It's important to understand here that some of these buildings, because of their height, are not included in the local law 11 that requires inspection of parapets as well as bricks. So therefore, we don't have it. So you'll have keystones from windows falling over and all kind of other things. So we want to make sure that when we are there, we want to make sure that the pedestrians as well as our workers are protected. So we may, in some of them, we have to provide the sheds prior to the start of construction. And there are 3 buildings here, and then we'll have to determine if that's required, again, that we may need some facade ties and repair work. The Group D are the more problematic one that require work prior to start of the construction. We have 19. I'm not sure exactly this one. There is something that I don't remember exactly what the issue was, but these 19 buildings, that's about 20% of the buildings that may require work before we start construction. All of this is now with the Department of Buildings. Could you go to the next? We have 88 buildings, 87 we completed. We are still, we are negotiating with an owner to allow us to go into the building. That's always problematic. And we met with DOB only for Group C and D, and to be able to obtain the concurrence. And at this point, they will provide us with their input by July 12th. At which point we'll know which buildings need to be addressed and which not, according also to them. The action plan is obviously to start the designer to design the necessary repairs, and then we need to obtain the approval from the building owners to go into the buildings, and the 72nd Street Cavern contractor will complete here the necessary repairs. Next is the 86 and 63rd Street. The total is 111 buildings here. 87 on this one, and 24 on 63rd. Now, just one thing to mention before we are looking at this, that at 72nd Street, we have completed actually blasting at the two shafts at 69 and 72nd with absolutely no impact on the building. So that's a good sign. Let me put it that way. Here, the 28 buildings were already surveyed to date, but no, we don't have yet the reports, but they were surveyed, and 59 buildings remain to be surveyed. The survey and evaluation will take 8 to 12 weeks from contract award. I want to explain to you what we're doing here that is different than we have done until now. We are retaining a separate, another consultant that will go and look only at that. We do not want it to mix it with a Second Avenue. I think is also going to be a little more cost effective. And as well, we're going to get an indefinite quantity contractor that we have, that the MTA has, to bid on the rehab work rather than going to the contractor that we have. We pay more for that. So again, that's going to, since we have some time, we're doing it a little differently. So we expect that in October we will have 8 to 12 weeks after that we will be able to get the work done. Next is done. That's it. Any question?
It's pretty sobering. It's a lot of buildings. Any questions?
The work that you were showing in backyards and in basements, that obviously does not have to be done to the vast majority of these buildings.
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you
You sure
that,
hope not.
Yeah, I hope not. I'm sorry. I thought he'd say no, but they were not done. I have to tell you that I've seen buildings, and there are some of them not that old, that you see them with sheer cracks in beams in the garages that are real troublesome. And these are buildings that have been built maybe 30, 40 years ago.
But if it's not Second Avenue subway construction that caused those cracks, are you liable for that repair?
In theory, we're absolutely not liable for that. We can always go to the owners and say, please fix it. And they will fix it 2, 3, 4, 10 years from now. Because they have to fix it, but there is a certain process. So sometimes you have to make a business decision at what is cheaper to fix a $200,000 repair or to incur a $5 million delay. That's not. It's a no-brainer.
Do you fix it and bill the owner?
Definitely not. They will never allow us to get in. If we're going to we did try that on 1766 and 68, and they said no.
So the neighborhood should be grateful to you for real.
I'm not sure the neighbor. Look, let me. In all seriousness, we are working there, and it is not a picnic for a lot of the people in the area. When we show up, and quite frankly, that's real pain for many of the people, and we're trying to do the best we can. Unlike the East Side Access, I refer to the East Side Access project as a stealth project, because the people do not know we exist unless we are underground continuously, or we are in the yards, in Sunnyside yards. So we're not impacting people's lives. Here, we are impacting people's lives every day, and we are cognizant of that, and we try to minimize that. Yet, quite frankly, it's impossible in this case to build such a facility without having an impact.
Do you remember from history when subways were built 100 years ago and they dug and then covered and buildings fall down? What happened?
I have to tell you, in my office, if you come to my office, you have pictures of the construction of the Broadway line, and you'll see Broadway. You see the mall in the middle, 2 trenches, and buildings on the side. Well, different times, different folks, different strokes. We are much, we have many more people here. The environmental impact did not exist in those times, and it's a different.
The buildings are 60 or 70 years older.
Right.
And in the history of the subway, up until a certain date, there were no building failures at all.
because the buildings were younger. They were just, more robust, and, you didn't have the type of utilities that we have today that we have to relocate. That is incredible. That's really the biggest problem that we face.
Thank you.
You're
Can we
welcome.
move on to procurements?
The procurement package this month, which presents both New York City Transit and MTA CC procurements, includes 10 actions totaling $27 million in expenditures. We ask for your approval of all 10 actions in the agenda.
Could I have a motion, and then I'll take questions, if any? Seconded? Any questions? Yeah.
On this Granite Brighton Line rebid, or whatever you want to call it, secondary procurement, the conditions that are causing this change were not known in the beginning of the contract? Is that why there's now a subsequent procurement for a project that's already underway? Page 6.7.
This is a result of work that was originally contemplated to occur at a particular time that was much earlier. As a result of repackaging some of the work associated with the Brighton line, the schedule moved to the right and effectively superimposed a number of projects on top of each other. And therefore, when we entered into this particular contract, it was realized that subways could not do all 3 projects as originally anticipated. And in this particular instance, it was decided that the best course of action was to move to have the contractor on the Brighton line do this particular work.
So this is work that was going to be done by the Department of Subways, and they're not able to do it, so you're asking the contractor who's doing the Brighton line now to do it?
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you.
And we're replacing ties that were not in the original.
Most of the work was going to be track work, relining the bed, and just realigning the tracks themselves, some ballast work and relining. Ultimately, when we actually went onto the site and we looked at the ties, it was determined that the ties, in fact, needed to be replaced, so we added that as well at the same time to minimize the disruption, not go back again at a later date.
One last question. What determined that you would, what ridership statistic determined that you would put in temporary platforms at some of the Brighton stations and not others, just out of curiosity?
Ops planning should answer that question, but do you have an answer or no?
We'll have to research that, and we'll definitely get back to you.
Aren't those temporary platforms, some of them are on wheels, and they're simply going to move from station to station as the locus of your activity moves? Isn't that true as well? At least I thought I saw those.
No, they do move, and they definitely do move as the project progresses. And if I'm understanding correctly, the underlying factor to the temporary closures is the volume of customers, but we'll research it to find out exactly what it is and how close the nearest station is, et cetera, adjacent station.
Mark?
On page 6.17, why are we spending $3.2 million to buy respirators for the H1N1 pandemic, which seems to have passed us by?
Those procurements were conducted ahead of time. This is a ratification. We've actually purchased those in anticipation a little bit ahead of time with regard to recommendations from the pandemic committee. That was an MTA-run organization. So these are all ratifications. They've been purchased. In many instances, the respirators and gloves and all the equipment have been distributed. So this is a ratification.
But these have a shelf life. I mean, these aren't things that will just cease to have useful value. A decision was made at the time to purchase these to make sure that we would not be in a position of not having the material available should the virus hit at its most aggressive rate. And so this is a retroactive action to basically ratify the purchase.
Any other questions? Can I have a vote, please? Any nays? Okay.
Service changes, we're presenting 3 service changes for information purposes. The one with respect to rerouting of the bus service on Flushing is being pulled from the agenda pending further discussions with the City Department of Transportation. These are all the first 2 actions cover the restructuring of the BX1 and BX2 bus service in the Bronx. And the last two actions present information on the committee routine schedule adjustments affecting both bus and subway service planned for implementation in the fall. And these are based on regular ridership numbers that we gather throughout the course of the year. And I know a number of the committee members had some questions regarding some of them. We're here ready to answer them.
Andrew?
I mean, I'm happy to talk about the subway changes that are here. I find it hard to believe that these are being made solely on ridership trends. The fact that you're suggesting that some lines have another 2-minute headway might be perfect in a perfect world, and if the trains were running like clockwork. But I was telling you earlier, I was on a train yesterday in which there was almost a riot because there was such a delay, and people were pushing and shoving to get on, and almost came to fist fight in some of the cars. Further, this is scheduled on top of the change from 100 to 125% of seated load, which is already going to further stretch out subway service. That being the case, one could see waits on certain lines go from every 6 minutes to every 10 or 11 minutes when you factor in the change of the loading guidelines and these. And I think that's unconscionable. Further, this is scheduled to be phased in December, I believe. It said for these buses were September, but the subways were December, if I read correctly. And that's one of the busiest times in the entire system. I just don't know how much more service you think is available to cut in this system. We're in the service business. I mean, what are we going to eventually come down to? A train or two an hour and a $10 fare? I mean, we're in the service business. I'm just amazed that more people aren't screaming about this, unless they don't know about it. In December of all times, with the holiday crowds and everything.
These are part of the normal service cuts we do based on riderships as presented. We knew for a fact bringing this forward for information was going to spur the type of comments that you have, because in the midst of the other service cuts that we're taking, it's hard to be able to differentiate between the two, and people ask questions. And there's no doubt about it that as we do some of these, you are going to experience on a given day when service on a particular line gets exceptionally bad and you've got an exceptionally wide headway due to a delay, and you're going to have very, very unusual loading conditions. And I wish I could tell you that we wouldn't see more of this, but as we do cut to the bone, and we're doing that in some of these services, that's what's going to happen. But they are within standard, and they are within the guidelines that we have practiced continually.
I mean, the L line is one where you've consistently added service due to the new demand with new emerging neighborhoods and everything, and now you're proposing to cut all of that back. I'm just amazed at this.
We're adding 1 minute between 12 p.m. and 1 p.m. on the L. That was the only...
I'm sorry, Doreen,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Why wouldn't we have waited to see what the effects of the big change from 100 to 125% of seated load does to the service before we would go and do this? Unless it's just strictly a budgetary thing, and if it is, we should say it is, and we shouldn't say it's to meet passenger demand.
Well, this is business as usual, and this is what we normally do as we watch ridership. So we don't suspend doing that.
No, I agree.
But in the context of the overall budget picture, we did take these into consideration, because if we wouldn't do these, then we would have to find, as we're laying out the budget, we made projections for revenues going forward in 2010, and we made projections in terms of where we were going to cut service for those reasons. We also took into consideration where for ridership we were going to cut service, because the ridership stated that, and we took credit for those. Otherwise, we'd have to take the savings out from someplace else.
Well, how much of this is due to the fact that the state did not come up with what they said they were going to come up with on the student MetroCard?
These are regular service cuts that are just measuring ridership as compared to the standards.
For clarification on the 125%, these reductions were as a result of moving to the 125% guideline as we go through the system. They're not above the change to the 125% guideline.
They're not?
They are not above that change.
That's what I've been told, that this puts us in some cases at, we expect 125% of seated load at certain times of the day that are off-peak as well as rush hour. Is that right?
That's correct, and 125% of seated load in the off-peak.
Well, then this is mislabeled if that's the case. If this is not the seasonal thing, if this is the change from 100 to 125% of seated load, it should be that's how this should be labeled, as opposed to the seasonal adjustments for.
But once you make the change to the standard, you apply the standard on a seasonal basis, and that change was made in the service changes that were made.
Nowhere on this page does it say this is as a result of the change from 100 to 125% of seated load. Nowhere. Unless I'm missing something.
On the
Page
Right.
718,
under the recommendations
or
section,
7-20.
these are
In addition.
No, it doesn't say that
It
it's
says-
taking it to 125%
No, it
of
says
seated
in
load.
addition to the change from 100 to 125% of seated load. And then it says these adjustments are in addition to those.
The rush hour adjustments are in addition to the 125%. The rush hour adjustments are application of our normal standards. 125% refers to the off-peak.
I think it could have been written a little bit more clearly. What might also be helpful is on the chart, and again, I hate to keep asking for more information, but if these changes are going to result in the reduction of a run, if there's some way that could be reflected on the chart. For example, if going from 5 minutes to 6 minutes means that you're taking one train out during that time period, it might be helpful to see that. It makes it a little more tangible, if that's possible, not to add to the information.
Well, we show the
burden.
change in car miles, but doesn't necessarily say train requirements, so I see what you're saying.
You mean runs per hour removed or something?
Yeah.
That would probably be helpful.
We can certainly get back to you with that.
That would be helpful.
But the car miles, you can get a relative example in seating capacity or capacity. And that was, but if
you know the seating capacity of each of the car types, you can. Sure.
Yeah, and how many car trains there
we'll
are.
see if we can come up with some others.
Yeah.
So the 7 train has excess capacity on it in rush hour, is what you're saying, huh? Wow.
Can you report? Do you have the ridership numbers there?
In the case of the 5 to 6 a.m., there was an average of 27 passengers per car on the expresses. For example, 6 to 7 a.m., where we did not make any change, there was an average of 52 passengers per car.
And the change was made in the 6 to 7 time period?
The change was made 5 to 6 a.m.
5 to 6
when
a.m.
there
time
were
period.
27 passengers per car.
You started an express train later on.
That's correct. The express starts at 6:10 a.m. now.
Right.
And we'll be glad to go through some of these numbers with you, because at face value, if you look at them and think about them in the peak of the rush or in heavy loading periods in the non-peak, we can understand it. But that's a perfect example of a case that cut will be made, and it won't be that the impact will not be as difficult.
All of this comes to, I think, $3-point-something million. These cuts. No place else we could have found $3.7 million without affecting the service in the entire budget? Maybe cheaper toilet paper or something? I mean,
we'll go through the numbers with you, but I was here at about 3 meetings ago.
No, I guess you don't want
and
that.
We are at the point on the side that the public doesn't see, and we are not going to be part of something where we're going into the deferred maintenance area or cutting into state of good repair. And that's how difficult the financial position we find ourselves in. It's just that difficult, including layoffs. There'll be another round of layoffs in 9 days unless we can come up with some different kind of negotiating strategy with the TW.
Are there any questions on the bus schedules? Okay.
One thing I would note on the buses is that normally, when you give us the September bus schedules, there has been a fair amount of putting back from the summer light riding schedules, when the schools are out and everything, and there's a lot less of that this time. I did notice that.
Ridership has declined.
Ridership
Continues to decline.
But in September is when it usually picks up. Isn't that the case? I mean,
Except for the economy now, it won't pick up. It's not picking up as much because of the downturn in the economy. So it's not just the school ridership that increases. It's the back to work, the normal work population as well has to be factored in.
So subway ridership apparently is much more resilient. It's continuing on an upswing.
It's higher than budgeted numbers, but I wouldn't necessarily say a large upswing. It's in the 1.9% range, so it's higher than budget.
Any other questions? Okay, we have an action item.
We have an action item. Section 8 of your agenda includes a staff summary seeking board approval for a 1-year renewal of retainer agreements between New York City Transit and attorneys who serve as per diem hearing officers for the Transit Adjudication Bureau.
Could we have a motion? Okay. No questions? Okay, well, let's take a vote. Okay.
Special presentations, there are the two. The one is the normal MetroCard program report, as well as the report talked about by Mr. Henderson, and that is, if you recall, we brought forward to the committee last month the recommendations on the train performance indicators that we, were the result of joint discussions with some of the stakeholder groups, as well as New York City Transit Operations Planning and Operations staff, and we said that we would not recommend them for approval until we had that dialogue. We have had that dialogue, and we're recommending that we do that, and these changes would be made in September, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Glenn?
That is correct, yes.
Do you want to?
We have 5 minutes left to make an executive session.
Okay.
Do you want to hold off on this presentation until July? Or
Oh, that's fine. No, because it's the same presentation we went through last month, yes.
All right.
Okay, are there any questions on any of the reports, MetroCard, performance indicators? We'll take an opportunity in July to go through them a little more thoroughly, but we have an executive session, and I'm trying to keep us on schedule. Okay. Is this, was that pulled? I don't know. We don't have an executive. Sorry for the confusion. It was indicated that we had an executive session. Apparently, we don't. Do you want to take 2 or 3 minutes just to hit the high points in some of the performance indicator changes, Tom, or
Sure.
at least open it for?
Basically, what we've changed is the absolute on-time performance statistic, which became meaningless because we had any work going on the railroad, any work going on whatsoever, we had station passings that resulted in a 0% on-time performance for that particular line. The other factor is as compared to commuter railroads, where the emphasis on-time performance, and especially terminal on-time performance, is a very telling statistic because it will in large part dictate how a person's commute is in terms of getting into work on time. The weight assessment is a more important factor in terms of the regularity of the train service we provide in relation to the schedule and what loading the customers see in that experience that they ride daily. Those are the two major changes, as well as the movement toward key performance indicators that are made up of a number of different individual measures that roll up to a singular weighted measure at a pretty senior level in terms of station experience, on-time performance, and I guess the car experience. And we note, as Mr. Henderson explained, we will have an ongoing dialogue because if we don't get it right, there's nothing to stop us to come back a year from now and see whether or not it replicates what the customers consider to be the experience that they're undergoing on a daily basis.
That means that every time the waiting time statistics show a steady and precipitous decline, you're going to change the method of counting it?
Nope, we're going to have to improve the level of performance. What we're trying to do here is make sure that we're getting behaviors that not only improve the performance as we're measuring them, but improve the customer experience. And the proof will be in the pudding, because if the two go together, there will be no need to change the statistics, and we will be operating in the range the public expects us to. But if our performance is bad, but the measure is a good measure, then you can hold me accountable for a badly performing system. Which 25%? I'm sorry.
Apparently it's more stringent in many ways.
Yes, it is.
It is.
But I'm not sure how it works.
Glenn, you want to?
Sure, I'll take this on. The way it works is it's a simple percentage of the scheduled interval. If a scheduled interval is, say, 4 minutes between trains, and in our weight assessment observations, the train interval, the two trains are, say, 4.5 minutes apart, that's a less than 25% difference in what the scheduled interval would be, and so that would pass. On the other hand, if they're 6 minutes apart, as opposed to 4 minutes apart, that's about a 50% variance, and therefore it would fail. So 25% represents the pass-fail threshold. For a 4-minute interval, it would be 5 minutes as the threshold.
When you view a transit system that's operating on rapid transit headways, not commuter headways, the decision as to how often you provide service is dependent upon how many customers are coming down to the platform per minute or per period of time. So you want to make sure that you don't have trains that are too crowded. So if you're running a 4-minute headway, 25% is an additional 1 minute worth of customers who would come down to the platform and compete with you and me to get on that next train. Is it a rocket science that says exactly at 25% it starts to become uncomfortable? No. But I think you would say certainly as you approach 50%, you're getting that many more people, and then that many more people fighting to get on a train. And then once trains become crowded, it's not a linear function. It's really more of an exponential function in terms of how that particular train drags on the line, and the dwell times keep increasing at each individual station. So the 25% is based upon the ridership experience, boarding and alighting, and how many customers on board the train. No. And we try not to freeze our passengers.
Any other questions? Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.